Headed to SoFi Stadium? Skip the traffic and ride the Culver City Bus Line 99, the SoFi Express, your direct $2 base fare round-trip ride from the Culver City Transit Center at Westfield, Culver City. Buses run on weekend game days every 20 minutes starting 3 hours before kickoff, with return service beginning at the start of the third quarter. And guess what else? We're hiring. Join our team and help keep the community moving. Visit culvercitybus.com or call 310-253-6500 for info on your next ride to the game or maybe your next job.
Good afternoon. We're getting right down to business here. We're doing it live, doing more at 4 weekday afternoons, right after Guy Benson and just before Randy Wang in the 790 KBC News Blitz. Right now, Mottek On Money, live on the air, 790 KBC, streaming live online worldwide at kbc.com. And yes, the on-demand Mottek On Money podcast, kbc.com, Apple iTunes, YouTube, all your favorite podcast platforms. Positive finish to a rough week on Wall Street, a nervous time on Main Street. Stocks managed a closing gain today after another nervous session, with the Dow clawing back the previous session losses with a closing gain of nearly 500 points today. This after we heard comments from the New York Fed President John Williams making the case for a near-term cut to interest rates next month. The S&P 500 closed up 64 points, and the Nasdaq gained 195 points. Volatile week with investors taking in the latest tech earnings, including the AI giant NVIDIA. All three of the major averages were up on the day, led by the Dow. The rally, though, not enough to make up for the losses earlier in the week. All the major averages down on the order of about 2%. The consumer confidence reading that we got today deteriorated in the month of November. Consumers concerned about high prices, weaker incomes, and mounting layoffs nearing record lows. That's according to the University of Michigan's last reading of its survey of consumers. I'll discuss today's and this week's market action with veteran market strategist Michael K. Farr at Hightower Advisors. He'll be joining me live later this hour. And on crypto, which had a very rough week, I'll talk about that with Jason Nelson at decrypt.co. We're seeing a Bitcoin right now. Let's bring it up, hovering at around 85,000, down about 30,000 from its most recent high. President Trump and New York City Mayor Zohran Mamdani maintained a friendly tone, according to reports today, focused on how they're both aiming to deal with the high cost of living as they met today in the Oval Office. That was one of the big meetings of the day. Joining us live now is Steve Hilton. According to the latest poll I saw, he's the front runner at the moment in the race for California governor in what's becoming a crowded field, with some more people getting into the race this week. Steve Hilton, of course, a well-known political commentator, also a tech giant in Silicon Valley for many years. And Steve Hilton, thank you very much for taking the call here this afternoon.
Of course. Great to be with you.
Wonderful to have you with us here. I saw the Let's Make California Golden Again SUV out and about, and I said it'd be great to talk to Steve Hilton. So thanks so very much for making it happen here today.
Oh, I'm so happy. It's great, actually. It's a very good way of attracting attention. In fact, I was in Bakersfield last night to join Megyn Kelly on her live tour. And we're in a parking. We're just getting some food at lunchtime in the parking lot in a gloomy, rainy day in Bakersfield. But our golden truck stood out, and we had lots of people coming up to say hi and wishing me well. And it's always good. Anyway, it's wonderful to be with you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. A Republican candidate for governor, Steve Hilton. Steve Hilton, what is it going to take to turn California around?
A lot of hard work, a lot of fight, but the truth is on our side. The facts are on our side. As you mentioned, you've got more and more of these Democrats jumping in the race, as if the answer to our problems in California is more of the same policies that got us into this mess in the first place. That's why, in many ways, people say, well, what do you think about this person or that person? I don't care. They're all Democrats. They're all just more of the same. Particularly egregious, though, is Tom Steyer, who's the billionaire climate fanatic who jumped into the race yesterday. When you think about the sort of central problem that I'm running to fix in California, which is the fact that after 15 years of one-party rule, we've got this totally corrupt machine in place that's made the rich richer, but regular working people are just hammered by massively high costs for everything, starting with gas, electric bills, housing, all those things we know make it we're the 50th out of 50 states on affordability. That's mainly driven by their insane climate policies. And this is a guy who's been behind all that for years. Now he's running for governor with the nerve to, in his launch ad, say, oh, we've got to do something about the high cost of living. Yeah, What we've got to do about it is reverse the policies that you've been pushing for years. The idea that he can solve the problem with more of the same is obviously a joke.
On there live with Republican California gubernatorial candidate Steve Hilton. You've been very active, of course, on the national news and also on social media, and you've been speaking out about how this horrific firestorm recovery effort is going nearly a year in now. It's hard to believe we're coming up on January here and the one-year anniversary of the firestorm. Give us your impressions here. I know you recently toured the Palisades of Malibu and Altadena.
Yes.
What are your impressions of this recovery effort?
Well, it's still like a bomb's hit it, and barely anything's happening. And this is after Gavin Newsom, days after the storm, literally in the smouldering embers of the Palisades fire, stood there saying, "We're going to have a Marshall Plan to rebuild LA." A Marshall Plan. Absolutely nothing of that sort has happened, because as always with these people, it's just a con. They say things. They don't mean. I don't know if they mean it when they say it. They certainly don't know how to make anything actually happen. And as always, it's this combination in California that we've seen so much of in these years of one-party rule by the Democrats, which is this terrible combination of ideological extremism and governing incompetence and ideology. That's what's been causing all these problems. So you look at the ideology, the climate policies, the extreme environmentalism, that's what caused the disaster in the first place. Obviously, the fire was started by an arsonist. We know that now. But it was their ideology that turned it into the totally avoidable disaster we saw, not least the new information we just learned this week, which is that the origin of the Palisades fire, which was the Lockman fire that started a few days before on the 1st of January, that fire was put out, but not fully put out. You had firefighters saying, guys, we need to run a bulldozer over here and put the thing out properly, and they were told not to. What we're learning is because they were worried about some endangered species called the Braunton's milkfetch or something. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. And then, of course, the catalogue of incompetence, the empty reservoirs, the failure to pre-deploy firefighting equipment and personnel, letting half the force go on, not come in and be available on duty. The endless failures, operational failures, preparation failures, and then in the aftermath, nothing happening, still the same bureaucracy, everyone being given the runaround, people saying, I go down to the building department, there's a different person every day, they tell me I can't get a permit until I get insurance, the insurance company is saying I'm not going to give you insurance till you get a permit. No one's blasting through this bureaucracy because the people in charge are bureaucrats themselves. People like Karen Bass, Gavin Newsom, these are just ridiculous machine politicians with no clue how to actually get anything done in the real world to focus on results. And that's the sorry story of 15 years of Democrat rule. That's why we're going to have change next year in California, because this is what's hurting us on every single level. It's impossible to do anything, to build anything, to run a business, to put your money together for your family budget because everything's so expensive. It's just a disaster. And people are sick of it. So I know people say, well, how can a Republican win next year? My question is, how can a Democrat win with this record of total failure?
On the Air Live with Steve Hilton, how would you go about cutting the red tape and bringing new urgency to this recovery effort, which appears to be stalled out there?
Well, I think the first point is to note that we've got to do that right across the board in California. And actually, in a way, that will be my number one job as governor. You just saw Eric Swalwell get in the race last night on Jimmy Kimmel saying his number one job as governor would, unbelievably, this is what he said, his number one job as governor would be to attack President Trump. What a disgrace that he said that. How absolutely arrogant and contemptuous of California working people and small businesses who desperately need relief from all this nonsense. In terms of cutting the bureaucracy, I know how to do that. But before moving here with my wife and my two sons in 2012, I was senior advisor in the UK government, had my office there in 10 Downing Street next to the cabinet room. And that was one of the main things that I had to focus on was the bureaucracy there. We didn't win the battles as much as I would have liked, but I learned their tricks. I understand how government works, how the process works right across the board. And I'm raring to go to get to Sacramento, take a sledgehammer to this ridiculous, bloated, nanny state bureaucracy that's messing everything up with respect to the fires and everything else in California. So I'm relishing that. You've got to go in there, kick out the ideologues, the climate fanatics, the people who are just consumed by making everything more complicated for Californians. Wherever possible, shut down these agencies and bureaucracies or cut them down. You've just got to reduce the size and scope of this bloated bureaucracy. That's what we got to do, and I'm looking forward to it.
On the live with Steve Hilton, and gas prices the highest here in the nation, here in the Los Angeles area, higher than Hawaii, by the way, which is in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. 100 years ago, California accounted for 25% of the world's oil production. And it's unbelievable. We're swimming in oil here, but we have the highest gas prices. What would you do to address the affordability issue at the gas pumps here?
Yeah. Well, that's actually the first one. It's the first pledge I made in this campaign because that's the quickest way to help working people who are being so harmed by this. We've already at $5 gas. We could be heading higher to 6, 7, or even 8, according to experts at USC, because of the refinery closures, the shutting down of our own domestic production. Exactly as you say, we used to produce most of the oil we use in California, and we could now, except of this ridiculous, pointless war on fossil fuels. It's not even working on its own terms because we're using about the same amount as always. We're just now shipping it in from halfway around the world on giant super tankers spewing out carbon emissions, all in the name of climate. Our number one provider of oil right now is Iraq. So that's all going to change. I'm going to end all that. We've got to get rid of the low carb, all these elements that make it so expensive, the low carbon fuel standard, the cap and trade system, the refinery regulations, and above all, opening up oil and gas production here in California, just as I was in Bakersfield yesterday, and I've been out on the oil fields. I know how to get it done. It's all about kicking out the climate fanatics from CalGEM, the agency that regulates the oil industry. They're putting in pro-energy people who are going to issue permits to our oil producers so they can get cranking. And that's what we're going to do, and that's my pledge. We're going to do all that. We can get to $3 gas in California. That was the first pledge I made in my race for governor.
On the live with Steve Hilton, Republican candidate for governor here in California. And in certainly recent years, it's been an uphill fight for Republican candidates in the state, as you've noted. Yep. And now with this Prop 50 passing all of a sudden this month, what's your reaction to that news and the outlook for other Republican candidates here in California?
Well, Prop 50 was a total disgrace. That's why I tried to stop it in the courts before it even got going, so we didn't waste $300 million of our money on this special election that nobody asked for, nobody wanted, and was effectively an illegal contribution to Gavin Newsom's presidential campaign. That's the only reason we did it in the first place. I think that there's a lawsuit now filed by my friend David Tungipa on the state party. Federal DOJ has joined in on that, so we'll see where that goes in terms of trying to overturn it, because it's blatantly unconstitutional what Gavin Newsom did. But in terms of next year, I think it gives us renewed fire in our bellies to fight this corrupt regime that just stole another bunch of House seats from Republicans, silencing and disenfranchising millions of Republican voices. We got to get that rage going. Like, they can't just treat us like this. The arrogance and contempt they have. They think they're going to be in power forever. They can do whatever they want, get away with whatever they want. You saw it in their attitude to everything. You saw it with that corruption scandal in Sacramento involving Gavin Newsom's former chief of staff. Now the state attorney general, Rob Bonta, mired in his own corruption scandal. This is how they behave. This is what you get after 15 years of one-party rule. So I think that next year, think about Prop 50. It was very last minute. No one really understood, who isn't following it very closely and very much in the detail of politics, what it was all about, districting and maps. It doesn't really affect your daily life in such an obvious way as arguments about gas prices, electric bills, the taxes you pay, and so on. Next year is going to be totally different. I'm going to be out there making the case for $3 gas, cutting your electric bills in half, your first $100,000 free of state income tax by slashing the state by the bloat in the state government so we can cut taxes, making it possible for people to afford that California dream of home ownership. That's what the election is going to be about next year. And on top of that, we've got a really, really good method of getting Republican voters out, which is what we need, a maximum turnout next year. That is voter ID. We're right now working hard to get the voter ID ballot initiative on the ballot for next November. It's looking very good. We've already got more than half the signatures we need. We've got plenty of time to do. We need everyone who hasn't signed. If you're listening to this and you haven't yet signed the petition for voter ID. You've got to make sure you get that in. But once we get that on the ballot, that's going to really help fire up Republican voters, get them out to vote next November. And I'm very confident we can do this. There's a majority for change in California, 60%, 65% in recent polls saying that the state's going in the wrong direction. People know we can't go on like this. And so I know it's an uphill struggle. I'm not at all complacent about it. We're going to work very, very hard. I already have been. And next year we're going to turn up the volume and I'll be working even harder. But I really believe we can get this done because California is too important. It matters too much to let it just slip further into stagnation and decline with these Democrats. And we're going to get change next year.
On the live with the front-running gubernatorial candidate, Republican Steve Hilton, running for governor of California. You're on a business show here, and certainly you've hit hard on the some of the big issues here already, including taxes and regulations. According to the LA Business Federation, LA BizFed, those issues are at or near the top. So are crime and homelessness. On those important issues, what's your message to the folks today?
Well, I do want to just emphasize on the business point. A lot of people know me, of course, from my time on Fox News and hosting TV and being in the media. But most of my career has actually been in business. I've worked in business all over the world, started my own companies in the UK and here in California, including restaurants, which is a very tough business. So I know all about how a small business works. I was a small business owner. So I'm very, very focused on absolutely dismantling this bloated nanny state bureaucracy that's bossing us around and tying every business up in red tape. In terms of crime and homelessness, it's pretty straightforward. There's no excuse for this homelessness crisis. I can't believe we've allowed it to fester for so long. There was a very simple 3-point plan. Number one, enforce the law. It is illegal to sleep and camp on the streets. Every homeless encampment you see in California is illegal. So we just need to enforce the law. And as governor, if local politicians won't do it, I will do it, and I'll use state law enforcement resources to get people off the streets. That's step number one. Step number two, we have to get them into rehab, into drug and alcohol addiction treatment, because over 80% of people living on the streets have a drug or alcohol problem of some kind or a mental health problem. And that's step number three, which is that we have to enforce Prop 36. Last year, we passed Prop 36 overwhelmingly, 70% of the vote, and a big part of it was making sure that people who need it have the mental health treatment that they need who are homeless. Gavin Newsom refused to fund it and to implement it. That's a disgrace. I will make sure we implement Prop 36, and that way, enforce the law, get people into rehab, and fund and implement Prop 36. We can end homelessness in California, and I'm determined to do it. On crime, the governor has a very clear role here. And so far, it's been a completely negative one from Gavin Newsom. He's been pushing this insane prison closure program that's released tens of thousands of dangerous, violent criminals onto our streets, into our communities, or into county jails, which are totally overcrowded, which means that at the local level, judges know that there's no space in the jail. So prisoners are you basically have catch and release for prisoners, which undermines law enforcement. They say to themselves, why should we bother when there's no consequences or accountability for the criminals that we put our lives at risk in order to catch? And so then the public their confidence in the system is undermined because they see that nothing happens so they don't even bother calling in the crime. So the whole system is undermined by this prison closure program, which I will reverse, increase prison capacity with a very simple message. More prisons, less crime. That's the answer.
Thank you for reminding me about your impressive business background, including international trade issues. When the Honorable Bob Pierce was the Consul General here for Great Britain in Los Angeles, he created a Brit Week, which became a Brit Month, and we were reminded that the UK and California are enormous trading partners, and along with other countries, of course. What would you do to boost trade here and pump up the economy here?
Well, my role as governor will be to be the number one cheerleader for California, encouraging companies to invest here by pointing out that under my leadership, this state will be open for business again. Right now, unbelievably, actually, given how we think of California as a leader in innovation and enterprise and all those great things, Chief Executive Magazine has an annual survey of which states are better or worse to do business. For the last 10 years, we've been bottom of the list out of all 50 states, worst state to do business. That's all going to change when I'm governor, and we're going to reverse the drain of businesses leaving our state. And internationally, I'm going to be saying, come to California. We'll roll out the red carpet. We want businesses to come here to create jobs and wealth and opportunity, just as we once did. And everything I'm talking about is not some impossible dream. It's just what it was like in California before the Democrats took over. So it's not complicated. It's very basic, common sense stuff. And when I'm governor, that's what we're going to get back to.
Steve Hilton, thank you very much for taking the call this afternoon. Wish we had even more time, but we'll have to stop there. Looking forward to many more conversations.
Absolutely.
That is Steve Hilton. According to the latest polls I saw, the front runner at the moment in the race for California governor, Republican Steve Hilton. Thank you very much for joining us live this afternoon.
Great to be with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And let's get out to the freeways now on 790 KBC.
So I send you to sleep after the loving.
790 KBC welcomes Engelbert Humperdinck, a winter World of Love concert coming to the City National Grove of Anaheim this weekend, this Sunday, November 23rd. Tickets are on sale now at Ticketmaster.com. Right now, caller 9 wins. Be caller 9 and win at 1-888-795-2222. You can get a pair of tickets to the show if you're caller number 9. Call right now for tickets to this Sunday's November 23rd show. Tickets furnished by Nederlander Concerts. Mottek On Money continues here. 790 KBC. We finally have a winner on Wall Street today. It's been a rough week for stocks as well as cryptos. The Dow closing higher by nearly 500 points in another seesaw session. We're at 46,245. The S&P 500 up 64. The NASDAQ of 195. We'll talk markets shortly with Michael K. Farr. Will be joining me live in just a few moments. Bitcoin right now hovering at around 85,000. Ethereum at 2760. Solana down to 128 and Doge at the moment at 14 cents. And now the latest news in 790 KBC. Mottek On Money continues here, 790 KABC. Head-spinning week on Wall Street. Our extended market coverage continues now. The Dow came in for a closing gain today of 493 points, settling at 46,245. It wasn't too long ago that the Dow popped above 48K, hitting a record high about 2 weeks ago. The S&P 500 did close higher today by 64 points at 6603, and the NASDAQ up 195 points at 22,273. The yield in the 10-year note now at 4.07%. The volatility index eased 11%. Looks like the major averages took a hit on the order of about 2% for the week. Cryptos having a very rough week with the Bitcoin right now hovering at around 85,000, down about 40,000 from its most recent high. And joining us live now, veteran market strategist Michael K. Farr, chief market strategist at Hightower Advisors, also president of the D.C.-based investment advisory firm Farr Miller in Washington. His books include $1 Million is Not Enough, How to Retire with the Money You'll Need, The Arrogant Cycle, and Restoring Our American Dream. Michael Farr, thank you very much for taking the call here this afternoon.
Great pleasure being with you, Frank, always, and after a very interesting week.
Interesting, to say the least, and appreciate you stepping up to the plate to boil it all down for us. Give us your impressions of what's just happened here.
Frank, I didn't like this week at all, frankly. The ebullience based on NVIDIA's earnings, I guess I was kind of relieved, because the great fear in NVIDIA and in the huge surge in the Mag 7, and particularly those companies involved in AI, is twofold. But it all boils down to actually just one thing. Have these prices gone far in excess of the underlying value? Are they running up based on hype and emotion and expectations that can't ever be met? And NVIDIA's earnings this week were really pretty stunning. Up 60%, up 55%, up 60%, up 66%. Revenues year over year, earnings. And you had Wang, the CEO, who came out and said, we've got over $500 billion in orders combined from 2025 to 2026. So there are real numbers there. That's good news. Are there enough real numbers in the future to justify the $380 billion promised in spending by Alphabet and Meta and others that are going to continue to spend on AI? Google said they've got to spend a lot of money on AI just to keep up with orders. So this is all pretty good for NVIDIA and things, but we got this surge. Then we had a reversal back, maybe on some economic news, a Fed that wasn't cooperating, and stocks traded lower. And then they went back higher today because of a whisper from the New York Fed president suggesting that maybe we could cut. So maybe the earnings drove us higher, but that sharp reversal during the day for an old season market hand like me, and I would bet you would agree, Frank, though I'd love your opinion, what that felt like to you. It just rhymes too closely to too many bad days in the past. And then just a surge up on maybe a promise of a Fed intervention isn't a fundamental issue. So I didn't like this week at all, even though we didn't end down as poorly as we might have.
Yeah, it was definitely a head spinning, stomach churning. A lot of ways to describe it politely, certainly. And what about the crypto world? We talked to the biggest fans of crypto here, as well as the harshest critics. The crypto folks, especially, taking it very hard with Bitcoin suddenly off its all-time high above 126,000 down to 85,000 here at the moment. What about the cryptos here?
Well, the cryptos had a bad week, and they've certainly pulled back from highs, and the great enthusiasm that was pushing them higher has faded. And it changes quickly to fear. You can go from fear of missing out to fear of getting caught. Fear of getting caught as the thing starts to drop and you didn't get out fast enough leads to little periods of mini panic. And when, with something like crypto, you can't come up with any solid argument of intrinsic value, you kind of have to go back and look and say, well, I still have a lot of profit and I'm willing to let this ride, or I don't and I want to take my gains and get out, or I'm already at a loss and I've taken all the loss I can get and I want to cut that right now. There's no way for anybody to tell you why Bitcoin was worth $124,000 a share, why it was worth $104,000 or $84,000. Now, I own a little crypto, but it goes against all of my discipline, and I don't own a whole lot of it, but I did it basically as an experiment because I needed to figure it out better. Anyway, I don't know, but it doesn't feel like a good sign when investors start leaving anything that's becoming an asset class.
On the air live with Michael K. Farr, veteran market strategist. So as far as crypto analysis is concerned, we're back to the one that we were talking about in years past. It goes up because it goes up, and it goes down because it goes down. Is there any other plausible explanation?
Yeah, I mean, it's worth exactly what the next guy's going to pay for it. That's great as long as you find somebody who thinks it's worth, a few cents more than you paid for it. You got to find that guy, though, Frank, and that's hard. That's a tough investment discipline.
Yep. Now, what about good old analog gold? Still holding about 4,000 here, and of course, we've seen gold hit around 4,500 at a record high. Silver also popped above 50 an ounce.
AI agents are everywhere, automating tasks and making decisions at machine speed. But agents make mistakes. Just one rogue agent can do big damage before you even notice. Rubrik Agent Cloud is the only platform that helps you monitor agents, set guardrails, and rewind mistakes, so you can unleash agents, not risk. Accelerate your AI transformation at Rubrik.com. That's RUBRIK.com.
Headed to SoFi Stadium? Skip the traffic and ride the Culver City Bus Line 99, the SoFi Express, your direct $2 base fare round-trip ride from the Culver City Transit Center at Westfield, Culver City. Buses run on weekend game days every 20 minutes starting 3 hours before kickoff, with return service beginning at the start of the third quarter. And guess what else? We're hiring. Join our team and help keep the community moving. Visit culvercitybus.com or call 310-253-6500 for info on your next ride to the game or maybe your next job.
Bruin fans, fall is finally here. That means UCLA football is back in your life. Head out to the Rose Bowl to enjoy America's best tailgating and to make more unforgettable memories with the Bruins. Nico Iamaleava and the Bruins are ready to make an impact this year, and we need you cheering them at the Rose Bowl. Visit UCLABruins.com or call 310-UCLA-WIN to lock in your tickets today. 310-UCLA-WIN.
Crashing through its previous record high. It's been hovering around the $50 mark this week. So gold at the moment at $4,062 and change. What about the precious metals and all this?
I really think the precious metals are more of a long-term inflation gauge, And when you look at $37 trillion in debt and a $2 trillion a year, more or less, deficit in the U.S., and take a look at 10 years, you've got another $20 trillion in debt 10 years from now on that 37 trillion, 57 trillion. The big, beautiful bill adds another 4 trillion. So we're over $60 trillion in upcoming debt. The only way out of that is monetize it, which means inflation. So here's a hedge against inflation. That's a long-term view of it. Shorter term, it can be a flight to safety, but overall, gold has produced tremendous returns the past couple of years. It's doubled. Will it keep that up? Over time, I think gold probably as an inflation hedge continues to make sense. I've never figured out how to trade it.
You celebrate the American dream in your book, Restoring Our American Dream. And, of course, Michael Milken this year opened the Center for the American Dream in Washington. And today, President Trump meeting with the new mayor of New York, Democratic Socialist, in the financial capital of the world, or what was the financial capital of the world. What's your reaation to what's happening there in New York?
Yes. Yeah.
What's going to happen there?
And Mayor Mamdani says a whole lot of things that are very appealing. I want to make everything more affordable for everybody. And we're going to have transportation and bus rides and everything on public transportation is going to be free. And we're going to do this and that. The only thing he doesn't explain is who's going to pay for it. It takes millions of dollars to run those buses through New York and to pay bus drivers and everything else. And there's no plan for that yet. But what President Trump actually just did was he just changed the agenda for all of the Sunday TV shows. They're all going to be talking about this huge reversal, but they're not going to be talking about Epstein. They're not going to be talking about his call to go after those group of congressmen who came out against him over the weekend. They're not going to be probably talking too much about Ukraine. He just changed the dialogue for the weekend. This is a masterful politician, Frank.
We'll continue to follow it closely with you, Michael. Thank you very, very much for taking the call here this afternoon, and look forward to many more conversations as we cover the markets closely as you do. We wish you a wonderful Thanksgiving and a great holiday season. Hope to speak with you again very soon. That is veteran market strategist Michael K. Farr, Chief Market Strategist at Hightower Advisors, also president of the investment advisory firm Farr Miller in Washington. His books include $1 Million Is Not Enough, How to Retire with Money You'll Need, The Arrogance Cycle, and Restoring Our American Dream. Michael Farr, thank you very much for joining us live this afternoon.
Thank you, Frank. Happy Thanksgiving, everyone.
Thank you very, very much. Out to the freeways we go now on 790 KABC. Mottek On Money continues, 790 KABC. Extended market coverage continues now, turning to the cryptos. What a rough week, with Bitcoin down about 40,000 from its most recent all-time high. We see Bitcoin got down to around 80,500 or so earlier today. Right now it's hovering at around 85,000. Ethereum hovering at around 2,760 here. Solana taking a hit this week, down to 128 here at the moment. And Doge is back down to 14 cents. Following all this action closely is reporter Jason Nelson, reporter at Decrypt.co, one of the authoritative sites on crypto coverage. And Jason, thank you very much for taking the call here this afternoon.
Thank you for having me.
Take it from the top and tell us what happened.
Well, it's been a pretty rough week for crypto in general. We saw Bitcoin has gone down to just under 80,000. It bounced back a little bit today. It's currently trading at $84,700.
Headed to SoFi Stadium? Skip the traffic and ride the Culver City Bus Line 99, the SoFi Express, your direct $2 base fare round-trip ride from the Culver City Transit Center at Westfield, Culver City. Buses run on weekend game days every 20 minutes starting 3 hours before kickoff, with return service beginning at the start of the third quarter. And guess what else? We're hiring. Join our team and help keep the community moving. Visit culvercitybus.com or call 310-253-6500 for info on your next ride to the game or maybe your next job.
Bruin fans, fall is finally here. That means UCLA football is back in your life. Head out to the Rose Bowl to enjoy America's best tailgating and to make more unforgettable memories with the Bruins. Nico Iamaleava and the Bruins are ready to make an impact this year, and we need you cheering them at the Rose Bowl. Visit UCLABruins.com or call 310-UCLA-WIN to lock in your tickets today. 310-UCLA-WIN.
Michael Rosenbaum and Tom Welling take you behind the scenes of one of the greatest shows of all time.
They're Ultimate Rewatch podcast. We're in the midst of season 7, and
hold on. Obviously, we had a very successful television show for 10 years that was Superman based.
But we had to make everyone believe that you were Clark.
I gotta be honest, I was surprised at the end of this episode that I wasn't.
I was too.
Talkville, the Smallville Rewatch podcast.
I'm not sure I knew when I was filming it that I was not me.
Follow and listen on your favorite platform.
41, but it's 36% down from its all-time high, its last all-time high.
Yeah, that is tough news for a lot of folks. This was supposed to be the crypto year, and there are a lot of write-ups about it, and I'm sure there'll be more this weekend, including on your website. But what has caused this tremendous downdraft all of a sudden over the past couple of weeks?
Well, it started around before the government shutdown ended. A lot of people didn't know how long that would go on, so you had people turning to cash out their Bitcoin for cash. The other thing that happened is there's been a lot of volatility in the S&P 500, and that led to just an overall market downturn, and it took Bitcoin and crypto with it. The other thing is that you have an outflow of ETFs. There's been about $903 million in ETF outflows since this whole downturn started. So it's just compounding issue after issue right now.
Very interesting. You mentioned the S&P 500. What about the NASDAQ? Some analysts here have seen a correlation between the NASDAQ and the cryptos.
Well, what you're seeing there is because you have a lot of companies who are loading up on cryptocurrency. We've spoken about it before, how these companies are creating their own Bitcoin treasuries and other cryptocurrency treasuries, but they're not really, like, for example, MicroStrategy has a pretty much we're staying in no matter what kind of philosophy, where these other companies don't have that. So if they're looking at saving money or inflow of cash, cashing out your cryptocurrency is one way to do it because there's really no way for anyone to stop you.
On there live with Jason Nelson at decrypt.co. Strategy, of course, Michael Saylor's company, closing lower today by nearly $7, $170 and change. The 52-week high in that one was $457. That's taken a big haircut, but I see on your homepage here at decrypt.co that Strategy Saylor says Bitcoin belief is unwavering. That's his word ahead of a potential stock index delisting. What's happening with all that?
Saylor is one of what you could call a true believer in the long-term belief in Bitcoin. And he's been saying that same thing for years, where he won't sell his Bitcoin no matter what. It's interesting that he maintains that because he has a company who may not be as faithful to it as he is, but they're showing a strong unified front where no one's contradicting him. But it's just a matter of how long can this keep going before we start to see dissension. But as of right now, he's the only one really doing all the talking.
On their line with Jason Nelson at Decrypt. And what about Cardano? Looks like their network was disrupted by some sort of a cyber attack or some sort of an attack on its system. What do we need to know about that?
So earlier today, Cardano was hit with they called it a malformed transaction, where basically the network split in two and you had two separate ledgers processing transactions at the same time, except one of them contained the malformed block. And when that happened, it really just caused a hiccup in the entire network. From the way that the Cardano Foundation and their associates have explained it, once the two blocks beat at a certain point, they'll stop processing the chain that had the malformed transaction in it and continue on with the main blockchain. So they think it's going to take a few weeks to get back to normal, but once these two chains pass, once the main chain passes the secondary chain, it should be back to normal and the transaction should resume as normal.
All right. And what do we need to know about the new crypto-related ETFs out there? Anything that's caught your attention?
Well, we did a story a few days ago. Harvard actually showed that Harvard University showed that they are increasing their Bitcoin ETF holdings. Mostly it's BlackRock's IBIT shares ETF. And it's interesting that these universities are also doing this. They're not stockpiling Bitcoin, but they are getting exposure to Bitcoin through these ETFs that are supposed to be an easier way for companies and entities to get into the market without having to be directly exposed to it. But because we're seeing how the market is currently behaving, they're still being affected by the volatility of the cryptocurrency market.
On there live with Jason Nelson, what are your market monitors saying about where things go from here? What kind of weekend are we expecting, and what's ahead for the holiday week next week?
Well, if right now what we're paying attention to is called death cross, which is a very interesting term that I don't think anyone really wants to hear.
Yep.
And it's basically a point where if Bitcoin goes under a certain level, no one knows what's going to happen after that. We're hoping that there's a turnaround, but again, because anyone can cash out their Bitcoin whenever they want to, there's really no way to tell when the market will go back up. Hopefully there'll be some announcements in Washington, government policies that may make the sentiment change. But right now, the fear and greed index is at extreme fear. So
yeah, and what's that number? What's that number on Bitcoin you're watching?
84,000, I believe.
Jason, thank you very much for joining us live here on Mottek On Money. That is Jason Nelson at decrypt.co. Be sure to catch his coverage this weekend. Thanks for being with us here on Mottek On Money, 790 KBC.
Headed to SoFi Stadium? Skip the traffic and ride the Culver City Bus Line 99, the SoFi Express, your direct $2 base fare round-trip ride from the Culver City Transit Center at Westfield, Culver City. Buses run on weekend game days every 20 minutes starting 3 hours before kickoff, with return service beginning at the start of the third quarter. And guess what else? We're hiring. Join our team and help keep the community moving. Visit culvercitybus.com or call 310-253-6500 for info on your next ride to the game or maybe your next job.